last video, I mentioned there's a section of the left that, despite their advocacy for safe spaces, simultaneously believes the personal is political, and so there can be no safe spaces from politics. The idea of a safe space began on school campuses, back in the day where schools were not explicitly pro-LGBTQIA-BRAAP+ in every possible way. Back then, your local campus pride center would have been named the Straight Gay Alliance Club instead, reflecting an approach that is actually more conciliatory between gay and straight people, rather than openly and obnoxiously shouting your gayness at everyone, as pride seems to suggest. But nonetheless, in a time where gay or lesbian couples might actually get bullied for being publicly but still appropriately romantic, the first safe spaces were simply lounges, where gay or lesbian couples could go to be at peace. Casual hugs or kisses were allowed for straight couples, but gay couples would actually get jeers or weird looks back then. I personally remember it happening at least once. So the point of the safe space is that they could go there and socialize and not be judged. It was a modern, non-alcoholic interpretation of the gay bar, basically. Personally, I didn't find this objectionable. I mean, I don't think people should be shit on for appropriate public displays of affection in general, but the idea of a gay lounge makes as much sense to me as a men's lounge, or a women's lounge, or a black club, or, yes, a white club. People can choose to self-segregate or integrate as they like, in my opinion, as long as the options for both are still on the table. Of course, the problem with the safe space is when people spend all their time in one, in order to avoid actually engaging with the larger world. When you seal yourself into an echo chamber full of yes men, that can't be good. And at the same time, when you start to expand your safe space, that can also be an issue. If the entirety of society becomes a safe space where your politics are catered to and other views are curtailed, that's no different than living in a world where your views are banned. Same thing, just in the inverse. If universities are meant to be places where intellectual development is fostered, where ideas, even controversial ones, are rigorously discussed, where people experiment with new modes of thought and ways of living, making the entirety of campus a safe space hampers this goal. Growth and discovery are not safe endeavors. They cannot happen in a safe space. It's no surprise, therefore, that psychologists are beginning to realize that safe spaces might actually be damaging to people's mental health. In the article, Safe Spaces Can Be Dangerous, Liz Swan writes, "During my recent teaching career, I was faced with a dilemma of either gently pushing a student to grow as a person or allowing her to remain stuck in her safe little cocoon. What made it a tricky dilemma was that my superior at the time fully supported the second option, that is, allowing this young woman to remain safely neurotic and developmentally stunted in her fear, which in this case was public speaking. While my first instinct was to say, come on, suck it up, it's good practice, it's good for your grade, something urged me to seek counsel from an administrator in charge, as it was my first time teaching in this unit. I explained my position. Encouraging this student to suffer her 2 minutes in front of her classmates would serve her well in the long run. She would realize she didn't die of a heart attack or throw up in the classroom out of nervousness, and then, just like magic, it would be easier the next time. She'd have grown as a person. Unfortunately, the administrator didn't see it that way. He worried that making her fulfill this assignment would cause her undue stress and hardship and make her want to drop the class, and even, he worried, drop out of college. Much to my surprise, I showed up the day of the debate early with coffee in hand, and there she was, sitting at the table, ready to go. Okay, I thought, this looks promising. The debate went well, with the star of the show giving her defense with confidence, poise, and a smile on her face. If she was freaking out on the inside, no one could tell, not even me. She got full credit for the assignment, and her classmates and teammates presumably never knew she had been considering bailing on them at the last minute. Curiously, after that class, she came out of her shell, volunteering to go up to the board when the class was brainstorming, telling jokes in class, and bursting with confidence. The transformation was amazing. It was the result I was hoping for. The trigger warning is the inverse of the safe space. While the safe space is a location where upsetting content is not allowed, the trigger warning lets people know that the location explicitly has upsetting content. And the internet is chock full of laughs revolving around trigger warnings. Just search YouTube for the word triggered, and you'll find thousands upon thousands of YouTube videos detailing triggered feminists, triggered SJWs, triggered progressives, screaming at Ben Shapiro and smarmy conservatives and facts and logic. And holy shit, I can't believe these videos still get made today. A psychological trigger is a stimuli that may mentally bring somebody back to a period of intense trauma. Before the terminally online woke brigade got a hold of the term, it was most commonly used to describe the experience of a shell-shocked war veteran who may encounter a sound or a smell that brings a rush of emotion, reminding them of some extremely stressful event from their time at war. It doesn't have to be vets, though. People who experienced rape or witnessed the death of somebody can have the same reaction. The original purpose of the trigger warning was to let people know that what they were about to experience contained a common enough trigger, a loud bang or something, that a shell-shocked person or a victim of abuse might have a psychotic break if they were to experience it. The only problem is, trigger warnings don't actually work. The evidence is in on this. Trigger warnings don't actually cushion the blow of disturbing content. They actually teach people to expect it, allowing them to have their psychotic break earlier and harder. It conditions them, Pavlov's dog style, to have a worse episode than they otherwise would have had. We already know what helps with these types of conditions, and that's voluntarily confronting them repeatedly over a long period of time until you're so bored with the situation it can't possibly trigger you, not making them worse by dangling them in front of you. And the worst part is, there's actually evidence that trigger warnings themselves create a triggered response. Let's say you find something slightly unsettling. Here's a great example. Trigger warning, Nazism. Don't want to bust anyone's bubbles, but Heisenberg from Resident Evil 8 is a Nazi. He's got the Wehrmacht dog tags. Well, no shit. A villain in a video game who is a timeless being living in Eastern Europe might have had a past with the Nazis? You know he's a villain, right? I'm sorry that Marvel and Disney and Star Wars have conditioned you to believe that the hot guy who's kind of a dark, brooding oppositional figure to the hero is just masturbatory material. But yes, villains can actually be evil. The point is, though, if you're somebody who finds Nazism and Nazi imagery slightly unsettling, seeing trigger warning Nazism constantly anytime Nazis come up is actually more likely to make you more triggered at Nazis than if there were no trigger warnings at all. These things create new trauma. It's been my experience that, for better or worse, people that survive messed up backgrounds oftentimes possess a decent depth of character that those from more privileged backgrounds don't have. Rather than working on making themselves more interesting or likable or experienced, people will instead invent more and more fantastic backstories or qualities in order to add a fake depth to themselves. I think that's where a lot of the stupid Twitter tags and bios come from, where a lot of the imaginary or heavily trumped up or glorified mental illness shit comes from, where the neo-pronouns or the they-them women who are 100% femme and have nothing masculine about them come from. All of that garbage. People want to be unique and different. I'm not going to call them snowflakes. It actually is possible to be unique and different, but they don't want to put in the work to become that, so instead they just make stuff up. And so now you've got people segregating themselves into ever smaller and more minute sexualities and identities and whatever the fuck else in order to feel cool and unique and try to get even just a drop of meaning in their lives because they've got it so good in the modern era that they're not out there fighting for survival or doing any manual labor. They've become nothing more than mindless, soulless consumers and calling themselves a he-they sapiosexual with demi-queer characteristics who believes in postmodern neo-Trotskyist thought or whatever the fuck provides just enough of a facsimile of a real fucking life that they can stave off the existential emptiness in their souls for one more day. But hey, you know what? There is at least one cool thing about these trigger warnings. Because of their current popularity, we're actually likely to see a return of those bomb-ass splash screens at the beginning of survival horror games that really helped set the mood. There are violent and disturbing images in this game. Sign me the fuck up, man. Alright, that about does it for me for today. Yes, it's a shorter video to tide you over. I've got some more big ones planned soon, don't you worry. As always, I'm streaming this evening, twitch.tv/gameboomers, make sure you're there. Alright guys, I'll see you tonight. Have a good day. I love you.